Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use. Tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, this is from Wallen and Clark, criminal defense attorneys. What are mandatory reporting laws? Penal codes 1164 through 1174.3. The Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting Act, CANRA, pursuant to Penal Codes 1164 through 111743, is a body of California laws designed to protect children from suffering harm. California law requires people in positions of authority over children to report known or suspected abuse or neglect. Adults should always report any instances of actual or suspected child abuse or neglect. However, many professionals are considered mandatory reporters who must follow the mandatory reporting laws. It includes cops, cops that don't rape kids. California mandatory reporting laws require some people to report known or suspected child abuse or neglect. If you are considered a mandatory reporter, you must tell a local law enforcement agency or child welfare department if you are aware of or suspect child abuse or neglect. Telling your supervisor does not fulfill your obligation. How about that, LAPD? You must make the report within 36 hours of receiving information about the incident. You may submit the report confidentially. If you are required to report actual or suspected incidences of child abuse or neglect, and you fail to do so, or you impede the making of a mandatory report, LAPD, you can be charged with a crime. Former elementary school principal, convicted for failing to make mandatory report. In November 2012, Lynn Villagendran, a former principal at a San Jose, California elementary school, was convicted of failing to make a mandatory report of child abuse after learning a teacher was suspected of molesting, that's code for rape, one of his second grade students. When sentencing the former principal, the judge said, "I agree with the jury's verdict. You did what you thought was right, but I do think you made a very bad judgment that day." The former principal had been told by an 8-year-old student, listen to this, you guys, that the teacher, Craig Chandler, had blindfolded another second grade female student and put something that was described as a salty liquid in her mouth. After the teacher convinced the principal that the incident was part of his Helen Keller lesson plan, intended to teach students what it was like to be blind, the principal instructed the teacher to avoid using the lesson plan in the future. A jury ultimately convicted the accused teacher on 5 felony counts of lewd and lascivious conduct with a child under 14 years old and multiple victim enhancements. He was sentenced to 75 years to life in prison. Although the former principal avoided a maximum 6-month jail sentence and was instead granted 2 years probation and 100 hours of community service, her reputation as an educator has likely been tarnished. Who must follow the mandatory reporting laws? There are many professionals who must comply with California's mandatory reporting laws. California law lists dozens of different types of professionals who are considered mandatory reporters under Penal Code Section 11165.7, including but not limited to the following: educators, teachers, coaches, school and education administrators, and other school employees. Medical professionals, doctors, dentists, psychiatrists, nurses, and most healthcare workers. Psychologists. Clergy members. A clergy member is not required to report abuse or neglect if made known during a penitential communication, in other words, during confession. That's getting ready to change. Social workers, peace officers, police, probation and parole officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, daycare facility employees, marriage and family counselors, child care workers, including foster parents, film processors, and computer technicians. What must be reported? Child sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse and sexual exploitation are the most obvious types of abuse that must be reported. Sexual abuse of a child is any unlawful sexual activity, including a minor, and includes crimes such as rape, PC 261, incest, PC 285, sodomy, PC 286. You may face serious jail time if you do not abide by the mandatory reporting laws in California. Oral COP, you guys can read it, PC 2888 alpha, lewd and lascivious acts with a child, PC 288, penetration with a foreign object, PC 289, and child annoyance or molestation, PC 647.6. Sexual exploitation under Penal Code Section 311.1 through 311.12 includes promoting, permitting, or coercing a minor to engage in unlawful sexual activity, such as prostitution, a live performance involving obscene sexual conduct and or production and or distribution of child pornography. Other child abuse. Abuse can be anything that causes a child to intentionally suffer harm. Abuse can be emotional, verbal, or psychological, in addition to being physical. For example, allowing a child to witness an act of domestic violence may be considered a form of child abuse, even though the child suffered no actual physical harm. Physical abuse is defined as willfully inflicting any cruel or inhuman bodily punishment or injury upon a child resulting in a traumatic condition. Examples of physical abuse include hitting, slapping, shaking, pushing, and pulling hair. Generally, spanking a child is permissible if it is age appropriate and not excessive nor causes injury. Additionally, altercations between minors are not considered abuse for the purposes of mandatory reporting. Exceptions are also permitted for the use of reasonable force by a peace officer or school employee during the course of his or her duties to prevent a minor from harming himself or another person. Child neglect must also be reported. Child neglect. The attorneys at Wallen and Clark have over 40 years of experience defending our clients involved in child abuse and neglect cases. Some types of neglect include failure to provide a child adequate food, shelter, clothing, medical treatment, and/or supervision. Like an ethics handling in Scientology. California laws regarding child abuse and abuse neglect apply broadly to parents, to those who care for or have custody over children, and in many instances, to any other person. Punishment for failure to report child abuse or neglect, PC 11166. If you are considered a mandatory reporter and you fail to report actual or suspected child abuse or neglect, or you impede the making of a mandatory report, you can be charged with a misdemeanor under Penal Code Section 11166. If you are convicted, you face up to 6 months in jail, a maximum fine of $1,000 or both. A whole $1,000. Contact Wallen and Cleric today if you or a family member is facing allegations of failing to fulfill your duty as a mandatory reporter. You need to speak to one of our experienced attorneys at Wallen and Cleric today. Our attorneys at Wallen and Cleric have over 40 years of experience defending our clients involved in child abuse and neglect cases. So, I'm not endorsing people that help child abusers, but this is very good information here. So I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night, wherever you are. Peace.